Chapter 2416 Dark Moon Civil War 1. Two terrifying auras collided in the abyss of eternal darkness, causing a deafening roar throughout the heavens and earth. The battle between the Black Moon and the abyss has now officially begun. The sky above the abyss of eternal darkness was completely shrouded in darkness. The moonlight, devoid of light, was like a deathly curtain, pressing heavily on everyone's hearts, making it difficult to breathe. The low growl emanating from the depths of the rift was like the murmur of a giant god, echoing between heaven and earth. Xian Yu Feiming was draped in a jet-black robe, his figure as solid as the night. Her eyes gleamed with an eerie purplish-black light as she gazed at the powerful and oppressive first Black Moon priest before her, a sense of horror finally rising within her. "I have already received the Lord's blessing, so why can't I kill you? Is this the power you received?" The first Black Moon priest's voice was calm and devoid of any emotion. "Nothing special." She gave a heavy, cold snort. "Have you forgotten? We are a race created by rebels. If Samuel can defy the will of his creator Kagago, then why should we, as the humans he created, sacrifice ourselves for his will?" She clenched her fist, her cold voice filled with powerful will, without the slightest hesitation. "We are free after being created by the Creator. We are not subservient to anyone, not even the gods. How can you possess true power if you can't even possess a self?" Xian Yu Feiming gritted her teeth and angrily retorted, her offensive becoming even more intense. After a brief standoff, the first Black Moon priest slowly opened his mouth and chanted in a low voice, "All moons shine together." In an instant, the night sky seemed to tear apart, and dozens of phantom black moons appeared in the sky, all casting their light. The radiance was not like darkness, but rather an ancient tranquility, like the slumber of time itself. Xian Yu Feiming's movements froze instantly. She felt as if the power within her body was bound by invisible shackles, causing its circulation to become sluggish. "Impossible!" she screamed, her eyes filled with terror. "This power, it can even suppress the power bestowed by His Majesty Samuel?" The first Black Moon priest slowly walked through the dark void, his figure as immovable as the ancient night sky. "Have you forgotten? Samuel's power was originally suppressed by us Black Moon priests. Do you think that a mere token of your power can contend with us?"
Boom.
She raised her hand, and an enormous ancient moon crashed down from the sky. It transformed into a gigantic blade, seemingly capable of crushing the entire abyss, and slashed fiercely at Xian Yu Feiming's body. Xian Yu Feiming hastily tried to defend himself, but was blasted away an immeasurably long distance. With a plop sound, blood spurted from his chest, leaving a terrible bloodstain. However, as blood splattered, Xian Yu Feiming's smile became even more ferocious. "Very good. Very good." Xian Yu Feiming suddenly roared to the sky, and the blood moon behind her suddenly cracked open, turning into countless tentacles of dark energy that frantically poured into her body. Her body began to twist, half of her face turning into black bones, while the other half remained human. Sharp claws sprouted from its arms, and black, wing-like fissures extended from its back. This is a combination of human and demonic power, a sign of being completely corrupted by the abyss. "Your Majesty Samuel, let me completely devour all this hypocrisy." She swung her claws, tearing through the void, and a dark storm, like the end of the world, swept across the entire abyss of eternal darkness. The first Black Moon priest's gaze was heavy as he murmured, "Xian Yu, you have completely lost your way." She raised her hands, releasing all the power within her.
Boom.
The entire night sky suddenly darkened, and an extremely magnificent ancient moon appeared, enough to obscure the heavens and the earth. Its radiance covered the abyss of eternal darkness, firmly suppressing all darkness. The two forces collided violently at the bottom of the valley, shattering the void and causing mountains to collapse. At that moment, it seemed as if the whole world was oscillating between destruction and rebirth. Xian Yu Feiming's body gradually crumbled, blood and darkness intertwined, but her laughter grew increasingly manic. Ha ha ha. Even so, you cannot change the outcome. His Majesty Samuel will return. Your sacrifices are all in vain. The first Black Moon Priest's eyes were icy cold as he abruptly clasped his hands together. Reseal it. Boom. Guyu fell completely, enveloping Xian Yu Fei Ming's figure and suppressing her firmly in the depths of the abyss of eternal darkness. Xian Yu Fei Ming's body cracked rapidly between the two powerful forces and then exploded with a bang. But she did not die. Instead, a completely new body grew from her old flesh and blood. The human body has been completely lost. She transformed into a beautiful monster. At least from a human aesthetic perspective, she was eerie yet possessed a beauty akin to that of a work of art. She had a devilish figure, with alluring dark bone wings spreading behind her, and her entire face transformed into a white bone mask. Hee. Her laughter, seemingly mocking yet also angry, echoed in circles above the dark abyss. The power of the demon god has granted me immortality. Dark Moon Misa, don't you crave this power? She caressed her new body with blissful pleasure. Come, join me. You too will receive eternal life and immense power. There was not a trace of emotion in Inuyumi Sha's eyes. You have completely fallen. You seem to have forgotten why we chose to break with Samuel. Even if Kagago, the creator of the universe, wanted to destroy a race, he would at least abide by the rules of the material world he established. However, Drucker, a giant god possessing human-like emotions and wisdom, was utterly without principles. Only an idiot would believe the promises they make. As soon as the first priest finished speaking, he unleashed another terrifying power, colliding fiercely with Xian Yu Fei Ming. Deep within the abyss of eternal darkness, the world seemed shrouded in a curtain of deathly silence. There is no light here, only churning crimson-black energy seeping from the cracks, the power of Samuel, the source of destruction and chaos. The entire valley seemed to be churned by the breath of a giant beast. The air was heavy, making one feel so oppressed that it was almost suffocating. The rumbling sound from the bottom of the abyss was like ancient thunder, a deep roar in one's ears, making it impossible to tell whether it was a natural tremor or a giant turning over in a dream. The air was thick with a corrosive aura that made one's mind uneasy, as if one would be swallowed up at any moment. At the very edge of this terrifying place, Father Orion and Sister Leibniz knelt in reverence, before whom lay an open copy of the Forbidden Book, the Book of Revelation. The pages moved without wind, emitting a milky white holy glow, but this glow was not pure. It intertwined with the crimson-black light of the abyss, forming an eerie hue. It is as if holiness and blasphemy share the same origin, and light and darkness intertwine at this moment. Chapter 24:17 Dark Moon Civil War 2. Sister Leibniz sang softly, her voice sounding like weeping or praying. Her voice was mournful and ethereal, reaching the depths of the abyss through the cracks, as if awakening some slumbering being. Father Orion had a stern expression, his eyes gleaming with a mixture of piety and madness. Strands of black energy seeped out from the cracks, drawn to the apocalypse, and those who manipulated the apocalypse were inevitably affected by this dark power. That power was cold, intense, and soul-piercing, yet it also brought unparalleled strength. Their subtle actions went unnoticed by others because the other Black Moon priests were focused entirely on the two engaged in the final battle. The power that the two of the four horsemen of the apocalypse, the Holy Sea, stole from Samuel from the abyss of eternal darkness was only a negligible fraction. Father Orion's fingers were already trembling slightly from the infusion of power, but his voice was as firm as a rock. Leibniz, this is the will of the Lord. Only by bearing blasphemy can we save all beings. Leibniz's tears silently slid down, dripping onto the pages of the book, only to be quickly swallowed by the milky white light. Her voice was hoarse, as if she were justifying herself. If this is fate, I am willing to become a tool of sorrow. Even if I am cursed, even if I fall into ruin, I will ensure that the greater good is achieved. unaware that their actions were subtly altering the balance of power in the abyss of eternal darkness. The crimson-black energy surged, and the roar of the abyss grew more and more intense, as if something was responding to their greed. The oppressive feeling in the air suddenly intensified, and the earth trembled as rapidly as a heartbeat. However, just as they were immersed in this joy and sorrow, the air suddenly froze. The turmoil of heaven and earth came to a standstill in an instant, as if all the waves had been suppressed by some higher power. It was an indescribable aura, cold, sharp, and as irrefutable as a judgment. Father Orion and Leibniz's sixth sense detected that chilling, killing intent. They didn't need to turn around to know who was behind them. They didn't die in the dark sun forest. Father Orion gritted his teeth, his eyes filled with disappointment. Even if we can't kill them, we should at least buy them enough time. Those guys are complete trash. He angrily berated Dao Lan and the mysterious assassin. When they arrived, Pope Alexander X had warned them that these human alliance forces could very well become an obstacle for them. Chaos, in particular, may be their biggest problem. That's why they used Xian Yu Feiming's power to set a trap and lure Zhang Yi and the others into the Dark Sun Forest. But who could have imagined that in just one day, they would not only successfully complete the mission of bringing back the fire, but also find this place? Could it be that their mission has also been exposed? Father Orion and Sister Leibniz were somewhat flustered. If their actions were discovered, given Zhang Yi and his group's style, they would definitely kill all the Templar Knights present. They can die. It doesn't matter. But they must take this stolen Samuel power back to Betagon. At this moment, Zhang Yi led everyone to the abyss of eternal darkness. When Zhang Yi saw the Knights Templar, there was not a trace of surprise in his eyes. On their first day on the moon, Zhang Yi instructed Gao Changkong to activate his ability, using Dao Lan as a reference, to activate the reincarnation deduction ability. Gao Changkong kept something from him until later, when Zhang Yi had Yang Xinxin shoot an arrow at him. At that time, Zhang Yi learned that he and Xian Yu Feiming belonged to a secret sect among the moon people called the Shattered Ceiling Sect. Having just arrived on the moon, Zhang Yi was quite surprised to learn such a juicy piece of gossip. But being a newcomer, even if he told others, no one would believe him. So he didn't speak, but instead controlled Gao Changkong. When the first reincarnation deduction cooldown ended, he controlled him to use his ability on Xian Yu Feiming again. Thus, he learned everything, including the conspiracy between the Holy See and the Shattered faction. Ironically, the people who once regarded the Radiant Moon clan as angels later secretly made contact with the Shattered Ceiling sect. As for the reason Zhang Yi didn't know, it's possible that those guys in the Vatican really did decide to sacrifice all of humanity in order to get into heaven. At this moment, Saladin, Morgan, King Arthur, and others had faces full of anger. Traitors to humanity. I never imagined you would actually join forces with fanatics among the Lunarians to turn against your own people. You're all madmen. You're all a bunch of complete madmen. Do you want to destroy the entire human world? Angry curses continued to emanate from the scene. The members of the Knights Templar stood in neat rows, their armor gleaming in the dim light. Their eyes were solemn, their faces tense, and the air seemed to be filled with a chilling atmosphere. But you could tell from their faces how nervous they were. The Templar Knights couldn't stop so many first- and second-rate human warriors. Brian stood not far from Zhang Yi, flicked his tail vigorously, frowned, and muttered under his breath, "Damn it, this place is awful. The evil aura smells worse than a graveyard." Fatty Sue couldn't help but chime in. "Don't talk nonsense. This isn't a graveyard. This is the final boss's home. Did we enter the wrong instance? Should we fight some mobs to practice first?" Professor Da Vinci rolled his eyes. "Shut up, you two. Don't you know your place? If you keep talking nonsense, I'll throw you into the abyss as fertilizer." The brief banter did not lighten the mood. Instead, it made it even more somber. Everyone knew that they were not just facing Orion and Leibniz, but the betrayal of the Holy See and the abyss, the source of blasphemy and calamity. The residual force of the battle between the two extraordinary beings in the distance was enough to make them tremble. Zhang Yi's gaze was icy. He took a step forward, and the demon god armor emitted a cold metallic sound. His gaze pierced Orion and Leibniz like a sharp blade, and he coldly uttered a few words. "Are you prepared to die?" Before the words were even finished, the space suddenly trembled. Countless transparent portals opened out of thin air, surrounding Zhang Yi like a vast, three-dimensional maze. Behind each door lies an endless void and a sense of being devoured, the air being torn apart with a sharp sound. The myriad phenomena of the universe have been fully revealed. Then, he gently twitched the fingers of his left hand, as if plucking an invisible string. Instantly, dimensional string decomposition was activated. An invisible ray of light flashed by, like the sharpest blade in time, cold, absolute, and irresistible. Silently, without any warning, the incredibly powerful slashing skill was unleashed. Chapter 24, 18 Dark Moon Civil War 3. Father Orion's body stiffened instantly. He didn't even have time to recite a prayer. His frenzied killing intent was suppressed within his chest. The next moment, his body was cut into countless tiny pieces like paper. His flesh and blood were shattered. Even his bones were neatly cut open, all collapsing in the spatial fracture, turning into silent blood mist that scattered in all directions. That scene was extremely cruel, yet utterly indifferent. It was as if Zhang Yi had simply plucked a string on the piano and erased a powerful being. True killing intent doesn't need to be overly complicated, because it's like stepping on an ant, a casual and insignificant act of annihilation. Sister Leibniz's pupils suddenly contracted, her chanting was abruptly interrupted, and a suppressed sob escaped her throat. Tears welled up in her eyes again. She reached out, trying to grasp the scattered fragments in the air, wanting to retain even a trace of warmth. All that could be touched by fingertips was the frigid air and the merciless nothingness. Orion was swallowed up. The blood mist fell into the abyss of eternal darkness and was instantly devoured by the dark abyss, leaving not even ashes behind. The roar of the abyss of eternal darkness suddenly intensified, as if it had become even more frenzied due to the blood. A deep rumble resounded between heaven and earth, as if Samuel had opened his eyes from his slumber, gazing upon the battlefield with a cold indifference that seemed to look down upon all things. Zhang Yi's expression remained completely unchanged. His gaze was indifferent and cold, like that of a high and mighty judge. To him, killing was nothing more than cleaning away decay and filth. The Templar warriors all held their breath, cold sweat trickling down their foreheads. Brian's eyes widened, and he muttered a curse under his breath. "Damn, bro, you did a really good job." Fatty Sue's face turned deathly pale, and he muttered in a trembling voice, "He didn't even give me a chance to react." This priest died faster than a chicken on the roadside. Saladin had already witnessed Zhang Yi's strength along the way, and he coldly interjected, "This is the difference in strength. Weak humans always think they can control power, but they don't know that in the eyes of true strong people, they are not even as good as ants." No one dared to say anything more, because they all knew that this blow was not only a verdict against Orion, but also a warning to everyone. Zhang Yi showed everyone present through his actions that in this abyss, he was the sole arbiter, and his will was the only rule. The blood mist between heaven and earth had not yet dissipated, but the roar of the abyss of eternal darkness grew more and more intense, and the crimson-black energy surged wildly, as if brewing an even greater upheaval. Sister Leibniz collapsed to the ground, tears streaming down her face, staining the dust beneath her feet. Her sobs were low, yet filled with a soul-wrenching sorrow. "Lord, why be so cruel? Why can't even mourning be allowed?" However, her cries for help went unanswered. The abyss responded with an even colder growl, as if mocking, or perhaps anticipating. Zhang Yi's figure stood tall and aloof amidst the blood mist and darkness. His gaze was calm, yet so sharp that it was impossible to look directly at him. "The first one." His fingers twitched again. Puff. The body of the sun angel Middelin exploded, shattering into a bloody mist in midair. Through the changing light, one could vaguely see hundreds of crisscrossing cracks on his body. Puff. Serial, the angel of the moon, met his end in the same way, dying almost at the same time as his old brother. Zhang Yi expressionlessly annihilated one life after another. Anyone who dares to scheme against him or bring him even the slightest danger must die, regardless of the purpose or who the other party is. If he is weaker than Zhang Yi will kill him without mercy. However, if the opponent is stronger than Zhang Yi will endure until he can kill them and then eliminate them without mercy. Puff. Puff. At almost the same time, the entire Knights Templar, these geniuses who were considered the elite in Europe, were turned into mangled corpses. Blood stained the earth red, and chunks of flesh mixed with tattered holy robes and armor looked like a freshly cooked spicy blood-curd dish. Even King Arthur and the others were so shocked by Zhang Yi's decisive and ruthless actions that their bodies went cold. If Zhang Yi could instantly kill Father Orion and the entire Knights of the Round Table, then killing them probably wouldn't take much effort either. The black mist in the abyss of eternal darkness surged even more violently, as if sensing the impending cataclysmic change. The air was filled with the smell of burning, the scorching marks left by the collision of forces. Father Orion, who should have died, slowly condensed his body in an eerie holy glow. His flesh and soul seemed to be reshaped from the void, and accompanied by the light of the apocalypse, he actually stood up again. Above his head, the light of the apocalypse shone, and countless luminous materials quickly coalesced into a magnificent and majestic body. He looked even more imposing than the original Father Orion, like an angel from a mythological mural. Everyone was stunned by this scene. Even Zhang Yi, who had seen countless bizarre things, raised an eyebrow slightly. He knew very well that dimensional string decomposition was not an ordinary attack. It was a spatial cutting technique that transcended physics. Once torn apart by such an attack, it should be impossible to recover. However, Orion's return proved that the power of the apocalypse was far deeper than they had imagined. Orion's eyes were no longer calm. His body was burning with an intense light, a light mixed with pain and madness. He murmured softly, yet it seemed to echo throughout the world. "The Lord is watching over me. My faith will never perish, and so will my soul." Then he raised his hands, and the book of Revelation unfolded above his head, its pages flipping wildly, and the contents of the holy book were chanted in a hymn-like voice, filling the air. This is the glorious sacrifice of a devout believer. Orion's roar echoed throughout the entire dark abyss. At that moment, the entire space seemed to be ignited by holy light. Countless devout prayers echoed in the dark abyss, the voices of all souls who have dedicated themselves to faith throughout the long river of time, converging into a torrent. Orion's flesh and blood were burning. He used his own life as a spark to push piety to its extreme. The holy light burst forth like the sun, forming a waterfall of light that was impossible to look directly at. Sister Leibniz had been keeping her distance from Zhang Yi, silently observing everything. Before she could understand what Orion was trying to do, she was completely engulfed by that light in an instant. All the people saw was her body shattering in the dazzling holy light, as if it had turned into countless fragments and been forcibly scattered. The scene was so brutal that everyone present was rendered speechless. Ole, why did he kill his own comrade? Could it be that he has also been corrupted by the spirit? Some people exclaimed in surprise, unable to comprehend the situation before them. However, a cold glint flashed in Zhang Yi's eyes. He noticed that Leibniz's dissipation was different from death. Dear viewers, thanks for staying with me. We'll try to get you more updates. Please like and subscribe and share the video with your friends. Love you all.